Good evening and welcome back to the regular public meeting for Wednesday, November 27th. We've had a lot of discussion and some new information in camera again. And I will turn to Deputy Mayor Wiley. Jonathan, did you have any advice first?
Sorry, Your Worship Council, we just need a motion to come out of camera.
Right, thank you.
Well, I'll make a motion to come out of King Camera at 8:04.
Thank you. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And we're coming out of in-camera. Deputy Mayor Wiley.
Good evening. I will try this again. I move the council direct administration to decrease the 2025 operating budget by $148,100 for a balanced budget of $39,221,400 with a reduction in the tax increase from 4.5% to a 3.62%.
And just for clarification, are we reducing the operating amount, or are we using the surplus that was told to us at the start? I just want to be clear on the wording for the public. Liana?
We are using the surplus at this time.
Thank you. So
So I just read the report that administration gave, or sorry, the motion that administration gave me.
All
So
right, and-
that's how administration's recommending to
thank
say
you.
it, so that we can reduce the surplus.
Okay. So everything's clear on that then? Is there discussion? Did you want to speak to it?
Yeah, so I know it's not even another full 1% tax decrease. It only brings it to a 3.62, but let's not forget that those numbers matter. And so this is just one last opportunity for us to make an effort to bring this tax increase down as much as possible.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Montgomery?
I just want to say thank you very much, Councillor Wiley, for your, I'll say, dogged determination to find savings and reductions in the tax rate wherever you can. So thank you.
Thank you for that. I'll call the question. All in favor? And that motion is carried.
Thank you. I would like to move that the council reduce the increase in utility fees from 4% to 3%.
And did you want to speak to your motion?
So this is essentially going to affect money that is going into reserves. It will reduce by a bit the amount going into utility reserves, and it should keep a few more dollars in our residents' pockets as times are tough, and we recognize that. And for that reason, I think this would be a good move without causing any undue problems for the town organization. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Peterson?
Your Worship, I remember when we were establishing utility reserves in the 2013 and 2017 term, and I just worry, or I question, if reserves are depleted without a plan for sustainable revenue generation, could it create budget shortfalls in the future? So that's one question I would have for anyone who would want to consider that. And the other one is that if we divert funds away from essential utility services, is there a potential issue with future infrastructure maintenance? And I don't know whether those are admin questions or...
Thank you. Jonathan?
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have an answer to that question, and I apologize. I had a separate question just to clarify the motion. So, Councillor Montgomery, just to...
Maybe if he clarified too, that would help. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, Councillor Montgomery, was your motion that council would amend the utility fees from 4% to 2.5% or 3%?
3%.
3%.
Yeah.
And so that would require also an amending bylaw to the fees bylaw as well.
Okay. Okay. And so how would I go about doing that?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Your Worship, you could potentially amend your motion just to direct administration to bring the fees bylaw back with that amendment.
Okay, thank you. And Leanna, did you happen to get that figure for the total amount that utilities will be contributing to reserves this year?
Riley has that number for you.
Thank you.
Yep. Through the chair, so the total transfer to reserves for capital is 2.375 million. Of that, 195 grand is general municipal, which funds capital projects. 2.096 million is the utility piece of that, and the remainder is 84 grand in cost sharing for the sports center reserve. So utility piece is 2.096 million.
Okay, and so by reducing our increase by 1%, that's roughly $175,000 decrease in what we would put into reserves? Because I was told that the 4% causes a $700,000 increase, and so I think a quarter of that would be 175.
Ethan, yeah, sorry if you have anything to add to, but the total increase is kind of a combination of both like reserve transfers, but also like expected usage increases as well. So not exactly a one-for-one increase, correct? Yeah.
Okay.
Mark, I think you have your hand up. Oh no, sorry, that's Riley. He's sitting in Mark's spot, and I thought for a second, this is amazing. Even when he's at home, he can light up the screen here. Jonathan, are you saying that as part of Councillor Montgomery's motion, he needs to have a part that directs administration to reflect that in the borrowing bylaw?
The fees bylaw.
Fees bylaw. Okay, thank you. Councillor Montgomery?
Yeah, so I'll amend my motion to ask administration to bring back the fees bylaw with utility rate increases reduced to 3% for this upcoming year.
Thank you for that. Is everyone comfortable with the motion? Councillor Wagoner?
I just have a question, and again, like I say, want to do everything we can to reduce rates and taxes and that. But Leanna, does doing this put us behind the 8 ball? And are we going to be playing catch up for years to come to try and get the tax rate down a little bit lower?
When we reduce our tax rate below what our inflationary rate is, yes, it does put us behind the 8 ball. By reducing the amount that we're putting in reserves for even our utilities, we're putting ourselves behind the 8 ball because we do have some large capital projects coming up within utilities alone. I don't want to say that you can't do it, but administration probably would not recommend doing this.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone have further comments? Councillor Langmaid?
Thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate the sentiment behind this motion because I do understand how much people are struggling these days. I do, and I think we've done a good job at keeping the tax increase as it is as low as possible. That being said, the infrastructure in our community is not getting younger over time. We're not looking at a reduced amount of money that we're going to have to invest into our infrastructure. A few weeks, maybe a couple of months ago, this council heard a presentation from administration about the cost of water upgrades for our community in the coming years, and I heard $70 million coming up for water reservoirs. I heard about water licenses being needed to ensure that our community is going to have water in the future. And these are big ticket items that if we wait until the last minute to fund them, that's going to hurt people. The increase that's going to have to happen in a short period of time to make up whatever money we need to complete those projects and future-proof our community and ensure that we have the services that people expect, not only 1 year from now, but 20 years from now and 50 years from now. I don't want to say, I am worried that if we keep focusing on the lowest amount possible, the lowest amount possible, the lowest amount possible, we're short, as finance has said, we're shorting ourselves in the future. And I think that that could be a really ugly wake-up call for a lot of people when we need to all of a sudden start saving for that. And I think what's most important to me is that people in our community have predictability. And sure, we can shave off another % off the tax increase. We can do that. But how long is that going to remain predictable for? How long can we shave another % off just to shave a %? And it's not that % doesn't matter. That % is money. And you know, and when we're talking about utilities, I did take the time to do the math, and I took one of my utility bills and ran it with the new numbers. And for my total utility bill in the summer, so it had high water usage, the changes that administration has proposed are costing me a whopping $5.79 a month. So if we reduce it by a quarter, well, I've saved another maybe $1.25 a month. And it's just $1.25, I know it's $1.25, but $1.25 is not worth the fact that, 10 years from now, we might, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, who knows, we might need to make up for this. So that's my concern, and I can't support this.
Thank you. Councillor Montgomery.
So I just want to check with administration again. So you're saying we're putting from utilities, we're transferring from the excess that we charge for utilities, we'll be putting $2 million into reserves, is that correct?
Through the chair, that's correct. So it's a combination of excess, surplus and dedicated capital reserves, that are charged on utility bills, correct?
Okay. And so I'm asking council to reduce what we contribute from around that 2 million down to 1.8 something million. So we're talking about putting 91.25% of the amount that we were going to before into reserves again. So we're not talking about, causing ourselves, major problems down the road. It's 8.75% roughly, 8 to 9% of the total amount that we're going to be putting into reserves thanks to utilities. And well, I can appreciate certainly that, these dollar here, dollar there, $5 here, $5 there, they can be inconsequential to some members of the community. I also know that some members of the community, such as seniors, they're already, especially ones on fixed incomes, are already being stretched to the limit. And on top of our tax increase, which is largely necessary, we are also increasing utility fees. And we're asking people who are, I'm not doing this for the people who are well off or anything like that. This is advocating for the people in our community who are at the breaking point already, and these several dollars here, several dollars there, when they are looking at their budget, can make a difference. And so again, it's $175,000 roughly out of roughly $2 million that we would be reducing our contribution by. Thank you.
Councillor Wegner, then back to Councillor Langmaid.
And I can appreciate that, Councillor Montgomery. The thing that kind of scares me about this is if we start to do that, we save 0.75% or 1% here, and we do get behind, and we need that money, then all of a sudden there's a potential for that big hit, that breaking point. And people on the breaking point, what happens if we have to come up now with in a couple of years a 7, 8, 9% tax increase? So that's kind of my fear. But I'll go along with whatever is voted on.
Councillor Langmaid.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to make sure that I clarified myself, because I'm not sure if I made this clear. I don't believe that this one decision is going to put us in dire straits. This one decision is not the thing that's going to cause us issues. It's the trend line. of these decisions where we're cutting and cutting and cutting and making it as small as possible. And as Councillor Montgomery said, you know, a dollar here, a dollar there counts, matters to people. A dollar here, a dollar there matters to us too. It just as much as it counts for the public, it counts on for us too. And I don't want to take more than we need, but I also don't want to leave us short over the long term.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson?
Thank you, Worship. I think that Councillor Montgomery has a really good point in terms of addressing reserves, utility reserves. But I don't think the 11th hour is the time to have the discussion. I think it's a much bigger discussion for a much longer thought process in terms of how you maintain or sustain your financial position. And if the reserves are, I won't say depleted, because the amount you're asking for is not a huge depletion, but it isn't a plan for sustainable revenue generation. And I think that if you divert funds away from utility services, you need to have a plan for infrastructure maintenance, and you need to ensure that that's really sound. And we know what our RMR, what shape our RMR is in, and in relation to other things other than utilities. And the other thing I always wonder is if tax reductions funded by utility reserves, I think that sometimes they can disproportionately benefit certain groups over others. And that's a longer conversation at some other point. And the other thing is that utility reserves that are earmarked for infrastructure improvements and upgrades requires this change to the bylaw. Again, I'm not in favor of it at an 11th hour. And if I was a business looking to invest in this community, and I perceived that tax cuts were being funded by utility reserves, or you know, and understanding that utility reserves are in fact a tax, that sustainability would affect my investment decision if it was big enough. So having said that, I don't disagree with Councillor Montgomery, but I think it's a bigger conversation for another budget. And it's not a big impact at this point in time, but I really do believe that it is something that we should get into at a future time. I'm not going to support it tonight. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. And my comments would be at this time, at this particular time, I would support this. I think this is with inflation the way it's been and housing and everything, this is a time when this might be a good reduction that won't impact the municipality to a great extent. I realize it means we're adjusting the borrowing bylaw, but I would be in support of this. The other thing I hope the public realizes that we agonize over this all the time with our staff and our finance people. We try to do the right thing. During the COVID years, we had a 0% increase in 2021, and I believe we were down to a 2.3 and another 2.3 or something like that. There were very low increases because COVID caused great financial upheaval for people. So this is not the first time councils have worked very, very hard to try to lower the rate to a level as feasible as possible. So I will be in support of this one tonight. Thank you. Any further comments? Then I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? And the motion is defeated. Anything else as far as budget, Leanna, at this time? Are we right where you had hoped we'd be this evening?
I'm going to say this is your budget, and we need to make sure that you guys are happy with the budget. With the information that we have received today, we are prepared to be bringing back the budget on December 4th for passing. Riley and I will be, and the rest of the finance team will be putting the finishing touches on it for some of these changes, and we would be prepared to bring back the package next week on
Thank you.
December
And
4th.
could you reflect back on what Deputy Mayor Wiley's motion will do to the tax rate increase?
With Deputy Wiley's motion, with funding, reducing our taxes by the total of the surplus that we had built in at the original budget with all of the budget changes that we have done, We've started with a 4.5% tax rate increase at the $100,000 surplus. With the changes and everything else, we have now reduced it to an increase of only 3.62%.
Thank you for that. That makes me feel all warm and fuzzy, too. It's been a long slog. I want to thank everyone in the finance department, our CAO, Kara, Jonathan, for keeping us on the straight and narrow. And I believe Councillor Langmaid has a couple of bits of information that tie into the budget. Councillor Langmaid.
Thank you, Your Worship. Actually, first I'd like to ask a question about the budget, just to confirm one of our line items that we budget for every year, and that's because it's very white outside. And I'd like to ask administration if we could confirm the snow clearing budget for 2025, and how does it compare to our snow clearing budget in 2024? Have we remained consistent?
As far as this year's budget, every year we budget approximately $1.1 million to go towards snow clearing efforts, including removals. And aside from inflation, that's the only increase, was just the inflation cost.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay,
I appreciate that.
you're welcome.
And then if council will indulge me, I have some follow-up information provided by the Strathmore Library. I'm not asking, I understand and respect that council has made a motion regarding funding for the library this year, and I'm not asking you to reconsider. But councillors had a number of questions last week, and I was, having not received them beforehand, I wasn't as prepared as I wish I could have been to give you responses. And I come back to you with better responses this week. So to start, Councillor Wagner, you asked a question regarding whether the library had considered reinstating membership fees. And I've gone back and reviewed some of my, pardon me, some of my records, and actually confirmed that it was this council in 2022 that actually approved the library to go fee-free. So that was something that this council did support. The proposal was raised prior to that election.
Councillor Langley, we didn't make the motion to do it. We supported the library when they brought it forward.
Well,
So they brought it forward as a part of their budget, and then we supported that. Yeah.
Yes.
But we didn't bring forward
No.
the motion.
No, I'm sorry, and that's not what I was trying to say. What I was trying to say was through the adoption of the 2022 budget, we supported that proposal that the library brought forward. And then they've also asked me to share that at least 173 libraries in Alberta have eliminated membership fees since the year 2000. None of the libraries in Wheatland County currently charge membership fees, and Strathmore residents are eligible to get a library card directly from the Marigold Library System at no charge. Councillor Peterson, you had questions about the November hour extension at the library, and I have a little bit more information that I can share with you. Marigold Library System currently recently made an investment into their sortation system. That means that our library no longer has to pre-sort the books that are going out to other libraries for people to borrow, because we share materials between libraries. And that has resulted in a significant savings of time at our library and a significant increase in efficiency. With that, they looked at their budget and their, pardon me, they looked at their budget and their people and asked the question, what can we do with this new efficiency? And what came back was that they were able to redistribute hours because they didn't need as much coverage in the middle of the day because responsibilities were reduced, and they were able to increase their time open without any significant budget impacts. When I say significant budget impacts, I mean if they're open longer, the lights are on a bit longer, and people might use a bit more toilet paper, but that's generally negligible, in my mind. Councillor Wagner and Councillor Montgomery, you had questions about funding comparators for libraries and specifically raised a number of $4, some libraries receiving $4 per capita. I've done some research and looked at the numbers that are provided. The last year that Alberta Municipal Affairs has provided an update they provide a summary of library funding throughout the province, so that was 2021. The library is receiving about $4 per capita. $2 is the legal minimum that you can provide to a library as per the Libraries Act. So those receiving around $2 to $4 per capita are in communities with less than 1,000 people. And because those communities are so small, they're actually not required to have a credentialed librarian on staff. So they can be run by volunteers or really anyone. These are libraries like Standard and Acme, and they're open between about 12 and 20 hours a week total. Was there any, sorry, I feel like there was something else that I wanted to say about that. Oh, yes. Speaking further along about comparators, High River is a good example. In 2025, they received $417,000 from their council in funding. They do pay their own utilities and $10 in rent. So once that's accounted for, their funding on a lump sum is about $388,000 to $390,000 a year. Cochrane Library pays between $25,000 and $30,000 a year to cover their utilities, some maintenance, insurance, and a financial audit. However, their 2025 funding was approved at $40.61 per capita. Sylvan Lake is another comparator that is a similar size of Strathmore. They have a $1 lease similar to ours that includes maintenance, carpet cleaning, landscaping, garbage and recycling collection, utilities, insurance, security, etc. Their per capita funding in 2024 was $28.33 compared with Strathmore at $26.29. Under our current contract for services with the town pays for building insurance, utilities, maintenance, and garbage collection on our behalf. We also have a 10-year lease with the library for the Lambert Center that expires in December of 2027. The agreement to have utilities paid by the town, including maintenance and all of that, was approved by this council through the contract of services that was approved in 2023. Next, renovations. Mayor Phil, you had questions about renovations at the library and how they were funded and whether the town was the main funder of that or whether it was the library. And I'd like to answer that a little bit better. So the renovations took place in 2017 and were meant to add 10 years of life to the building, so we're coming up on that at the end of 2027. At that time, the MOU that was agreed to between the town and the library indicated a sharing of costs. The library contributed $350,000 and the town contributed $350,000. The library moved into the Lambert Center originally in 1983, which, Mayor Field, I think that's the, if I remember correctly, that's the year you arrived here, so maybe you brought the library, I'm not sure. No. So they moved there in 1983, and looking through some of the history of that move, they fundraised a significant amount of money to support the construction of that building. In 2002, they were able to move from kind of the smaller part of the Lambert Center into the main hall of the Lambert Center. And again, that move was supported by library fundraising. The town did provide funds, but the library was not a silent partner in that. The library did provide funds in that endeavor. I'm sorry, I know I have 5 minutes, but I'm going to try and power through this. In terms of reserves, there were some questions about reserves, and I just wanted to confirm with council that the library currently has $164,000 in reserves. That was significantly depleted by the $350,000 that was invested by the library into the Lambert Center, and they've been unable, through the funding provided by the town, to recoup and rebuild those reserves. So we're currently sitting at 160. When I say unable to recoup, I mean in any sort of large amount. That, I believe, covers all the questions that were asked of me at the last meeting.
Could I ask you a follow-up? Like,
Sure.
I understand that the library put in a lot of money for the renovations in 2017, but that money would have come from somewhere initially, right? Where would that money have come from?
Oh, I mean, from the town, from the county,
Yeah.
from membership. I mean, I guess the question kind of becomes, you have a point, yeah, it would have come from the town originally.
Thanks. And the other thing is, I believe when that building was built, it was a community center. And
Yes,
then
it was, and they operated
so
out of part of
The
it.
town built it as a community center, and it was converted to a library, is my understanding.
That's not
Because I
what,
used to go to that community center
it
before.
so it was a community center, yes, but it was built it was concurrent. So the library moved in when the community center was new,
Okay,
and it was a part of it.
yeah. Okay, that part I get now, thanks.
Yeah, so I mean, I think what's frustrating for the library, and Mayor, I think your comments kind of summarize it well, is that the library is somehow both considered an extension of the town and an organization that's supposed to operate independently, and it's an awkward relationship. You know, when you say, well, where did the money come from first? Well, yes, sure, it came from the town originally, but you could say that of the Handy Bus or any other organization that we provide funding to that currently maintain reserves. It was through the hard work of the library and the people who work there and the volunteers who fundraised that they were able to build those reserves. And yes, I can acknowledge that money did originally come from the town, but I'm not sure that I would agree that degrades the meaning of their contribution into
No, I don't want anyone to think that I'm demeaning their contribution or anything like that. I'm just saying, yeah, there is a partnership, but the bulk of the money does come from the town of Strathmore, and I think you've said in the past that there hasn't been a lot of fundraising until recently. So I know the library board does a great job, and I'm a big supporter of the library, but I just think we need to be careful as far as how we present or portray everything, because everything, like Deputy Mayor Wiley always says, we're the last stop or the last buck. We're the funding, we're the bulk of the funding for it. And so, you know, we have some questions, but that doesn't mean we don't support them or I don't support them at all. I didn't want anyone to think that. Councillor Peterson, and then I'll come back to
Thank you, Worship.
Councillor.
I want to say, to start with, that I really appreciate Councillor Langmaid's dedication to both Marigold and to the Strathmore Municipal Library. It's not an easy job, and if you've been there and traveled with the Orange Binder, you know exactly what that means. And so nobody sitting behind this table at this desk doesn't support the Strathmore Library, and you just had to look at the amount of money, the very limited amount of money that we had to spend, and see the really painful cuts to so many really deserving groups in this community, to know that just like our taxpayers and all of the other groups that we support to try to give a hand up, a lot of suffering happened in this day and in this time. And one of the things that I think that in terms of libraries, where Marigold has set a phenomenal precedent, and that is that when Marigold budgets, they come to their 43 municipalities ahead of time, and they come with the very fullness of their hopes and dreams and their own actions in terms of building a sustainable system for libraries across our region and those 43 municipalities. And so it prevents wish list budgeting from happening. And so sometimes, you know, we're all guilty of that. But I think that following the Marigold example for our local library will be something that would be extremely useful for them in the future, so that they anticipate what they're looking at year over year, and coming to their potential funders with that information in the same way that that the oversight that Marigold has it, in the same way that they have done. I think that would make it much more predictable for everyone and much less disappointing. And I really appreciate what you do bring to the table.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Back to Councillor Langmaid.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson and Mayor Fuel. The library I heard you, and the library heard you when, Councillor Peterson, last week when you mentioned avoiding wish list budgeting. And on Monday night, the library board did have an emergency meeting of the board to discuss what the future of the library will look like with the current funding that's been allocated, and how they might be able to move forward in a sustainable fashion. And we are having those conversations. And I don't have any other than we had a meeting and we've had the discussion. I'm sorry, I don't have any further update on that. And then just to close out this item, because I don't have anything else to add to it, I would just like to ask council. I am your representative on the library board, and I am absolutely happy to answer all of your questions. But if you could please send them to me ahead of time, so that I can come prepared with the proper information to share with you. I think it would save us all a little bit of time, a little bit of grief, and like I said, I'm very happy to answer any and all questions you bring forward. It's just very helpful for me to have a little bit of notice beforehand so that I can collect the correct information and give you the best answers possible.
Thank you. I believe that brings us to a conclusion. There's nothing else to discuss. I think we've done a good job tonight. I appreciate everyone's efforts. So at this time, I will adjourn the meeting at 8:40.